Hi everyone. So I did my capstone project on why ground level ozone affects the lungs. So first I'll go over what ozone is. Ozone is a gas that's composed of three atoms of oxygen. It's highly reactive and unstable. And there are two types of ozone. One of the types is stratospheric ozone, and then the other type is ground level ozone. Stratospheric ozone occurs naturally in the upper atmosphere, and this ozone is the so-called good ozone because it is beneficial. It protects living organisms from harmful ultraviolet rays that come from the sun. And this is what people talk about when they're talking about holes in like the ozone layer. They're talking about the stratospheric ozone, not the ground level ozone. The ground level ozone, on the other hand, is the bad ozone because it's harmful to living organisms, as I'm going to talk about in this presentation. It has many harmful effects on human lungs and other living organisms. And as I said, this presentation will focus on how ground level ozone affects the lungs and harms the lungs. Okay, so moving on to the two types of ozone. This is just like a visual. There's stratospheric ozone and then tropospheric ozone, which is synonymous with ground level ozone. So talking more about ground level ozone, as I said, it's also called tropospheric ozone because it's in that like level of the atmosphere. Ozone at the ground level pollutes the air and is involved in smog. It is a powerful greenhouse gas and air pollutant. So obviously, it's not very good for the environment, and it has many harmful effects to the environment in addition to the human body. Um, it's not directly emitted into the air. Rather, it is caused by the reaction between oxides of nitrogen, which can be abbreviated as NO, and then like however many oxides of nitrogen there are, and volatile organic compounds, which is abbreviated as seen in the slide. So in other words, in simpler terms, it's created when pollutants emitted by sources such as factories or cars chemically react in the presence of sunlight. So humans obviously do have a lot of responsibility when it comes to the ground level ozone because obviously factories and cars are human made things and they play a large role in contributing to the level of ozone that we see in the troposphere. And ground level ozone reaches dangerously high levels on sunny days in urban and suburban environments, especially where there's generally more people, more buildings. But it's able to be transported by wind, so essentially it affects everywhere. But it's especially dangerous in urban and suburban environments. Um, so now we are finally at the main topic of today's presentation. Ozone is breathed directly into the lungs, so obviously it has a very direct effect onto your lungs and your lung health. And unfortunately, it has many negative effects on your lungs. So some of the short-term effects are coughing, having a sore or scratchy throat, reduced lung function. So that means like you're able to breathe in less air than like you would normally be able to. And this can cause shortness of breath. It causes inflammation and damage to the respiratory tract because ozone, the chemical of ozone, inflames and damages the cells that line the lungs, which again contributes to the reduced lung function. and it increases the permeability of lung cells, which makes them more vulnerable to toxins and microorganisms. So now, in addition to reducing the effectiveness or the function of the lungs, it's making the lungs more susceptible to um, dangerous toxins and microorganisms that can get you sick and threaten your health. Um, so yeah, as I said, breathing in ozone increases one's susceptibility to lung infections, general like allergens, and other air pollutants, none of which are good for you or your health. Moving on to more long-term effects. Over time, obviously, ozone is in the environment and you breathe it in every day directly into your lungs. So, over time, it's been seen that ozone can cause development of aggravate lung diseases such as asthma and chronic bronchitis, and other ones. And it increases the frequency of asthma attacks for those who suffer from asthma, and it worsens asthma symptoms. Um, Ozone can also cause permanent lung damage, um, which is very serious. If one is exposed to ozone as a child repeatedly, it leads to long-term reduced functioning lungs when they grow into adulthood, which makes them more susceptible to acute and chronic lung conditions. And if one is exposed a lot to ozone as an adult, in addition to childhood, it can accelerate decline in lung function. Normally, our lung function as humans does decline as a result of just aging and getting older, but ozone speeds up this process. And obviously, these effects can vary widely among different individuals because everyone lives in a different environment. Some people might live in more an urban environment or a more warm environment, which makes it like the effect worse. Some people might live in a rural, like colder environment, which could reduce the effects. So obviously, the effects of ozone on the lungs vary widely. Um, but they also vary based on the individual themselves. So let's say two people live in the exact same environment, exact same city. Even then, even when the dose and duration of exposure are the same, we could still see um, varying effects between those two individuals. So, who's more at risk? Obviously, people with pre-existing lung conditions are more at risk. So people with asthma and similar lung conditions are more at risk. And children are also more at risk than adults because their lungs are still developing. They're more prone to getting sick, so they're more at risk for the harmful effects of ozone. And in addition to their lungs still developing, they also spend more time outside. So they're breathing in more of that ozone than adults who tend to spend more time inside. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for listening.